Hi, I'm Lauren Fagan, and this spring I am singing the iconic role of Tatyana in EUGENE ONEGIN at the Canadian Opera Company. I had a great time making my COC debut 2 seasons ago as the Countess in The Marriage of Figaro. Now I'm excited to return to the stage in this Tchaikovsky classic. Today we're going to explore a bit about the opera's history, its score, as well as the look and feel of this internationally acclaimed production. By the time you get to the theatre, you'll be all set to dive into this romantic masterpiece. Let's get started. While largely known for composing ballets and symphonies, Tchaikovsky composed 11 operas during his relatively brief lifetime. Deeply inspired by seeing the Ring cycle in Bayreuth, he began composing Onegin the very next year. The opera is based on the classic novel in verse by Alexander Pushkin. Although he was initially uncertain about EUGENE ONEGIN's potential as an opera, Tchaikovsky was won over by the story's expressive beauty, compelling character development, and astute social commentary. He sketched an episodic scenario in a single night, retaining much of Pushkin's original poetry. EUGENE ONEGIN premiered in March 1879 at the Marly Theatre and was restaged 2 years later at the Bolshoi Theatre at the request of Emperor Alexander III. A bit of a fun fact, Marly means small and Bolshoi means big, so this gives you a sense of the opera's growing popularity. However, you could say Onegin was something of a sleeper hit until 1892, when a pivotal performance in Hamburg, conducted by Gustav Mahler, changed everything. The opera was met with applause after every scene, and curtain calls for Tchaikovsky, whose work would go on to become an established part of the opera repertoire. I think it's common for people to assume that opera typically deals in stories that are fantastical or entirely separate from life as we know it. But what's great about EUGENE ONEGIN is that at its core, it is a story about falling in love and the very human tendency to take for granted the things that are right in front of us. The opera begins with an introduction to my character, Tatyana, and my sister, Olga. Our quiet night at home is interrupted when Olga's love interest, Lenski, arrives with a new friend in tow, the very handsome and very charismatic EUGENE ONEGIN. Naturally, this is a love at first sight situation. I am smitten, and without an ounce of chill, I pour out all my feelings in a letter which I have delivered to Onegin. His response, however, is entirely cool, and to my horror, I find myself friend-zoned. From there, the opera follows Onegin as he instigates, then must navigate a fatal loss, and after years of being apart, our paths finally cross once more. But this time, the tables have turned, and it's my character Tatyana who must accept or reject a lover's appeal. This production, originally from the Metropolitan Opera, created by an all-Canadian team, is known for its sparse minimalism. Critics were initially dismissive, missing the lush sets that opera is typically known for. But after several revivals, the production has actually become beloved for its simplicity, which allows audiences to focus on the characters' emotional journeys. In Robert Carsen's vision for EUGENE ONEGIN, the opera is told as though it is a series of memories, with key design details representing elements that are integral to each. The opera's first act depicts an autumnal countryside using only a massive spray of leaves and orange-hued lighting. As the story progresses, each new environment is created through some choice pieces. Tatyana's letter scene features her bed and desk. A circle of ornate chairs evokes a stately ballroom, and a single chair serves as the backdrop for the emotional finale. By comparison, the costumes are incredibly lavish. The silks and hoop skirts are everything you might imagine for 19th century society parties. And the COC costume team certainly has their hands full, doing some major quick changes between scenes. One of the greatest things about EUGENE ONEGIN is its hummability. It's easy to walk out of the theatre with its melodies in your head, and that's largely due to Tchaikovsky's belief in composing music that can always be sung, even if it wasn't actually written for the voice. From start to finish, the opera grabs hold of listeners and draws them in, taking us on an emotional journey from countryside to city, and from youthful naivety to the wisdom gained through age and experience. Early on in Onegin, we hear the joyful strains of the peasants' chorus in Act 1. The workers have finished harvesting and have come to greet Madame Larina. There's also the famous Polonaise in Act 3, an upbeat and grand musical number that takes place once the action has moved to a stately Moscow ballroom. However, two of the opera's most famous arias are sung by the characters closest to and most deeply wounded by our title protagonist. In Act 2, Onegin's friend Lenski is wistful and resigned as he sings, "Where have you gone, O golden days of my spring?" This somber movement, just ahead of a dramatic duel, is gorgeously orchestrated with woodwinds, brass and strings. And of course, there's Tatyana's letter scene, a show-stopping solo that explores the depth and strength of the young woman's love as she composes a letter confessing her feelings for Onegin. The letter scene bears Tatyana's soul to the audience in real time. This aria is such a pleasure to sing. The wave of emotions and feelings are so perfectly set to the score. It really is one of the most natural arias I've sung to date. I think it's a gift to sing a role for the first time. And with that in mind, I'm keeping a very open mind going into this process. The sparsely designed set and symbolic production really lends itself to huge personal interpretation, which is always an incredible opportunity for a singer. It takes huge self-control to not immediately dive into singing the well-known and gorgeous melodies of this opera, but I really made a conscious effort not to do this. Russian is a highly complex and difficult language, which I also don't speak, so instead I spent hours quietly repeating the words to myself in order to build in the muscle memory required to get comfortable with the language. Once I felt confident and fluent with the text, adding the music on top of this took very little effort at all. Of course, I have now worked with musical and language coaches to help build my stamina for this emotionally and vocally demanding role. But I have honestly dreamed of singing Tatyana since singing in the Onegin chorus at the Glyndebourne Festival Opera back in 2014. To make my debut in this role in such an iconic production is truly the icing on the cake. There are so many reasons to see EUGENE ONEGIN. I personally find the core of the piece so innately human. I think it would be close to impossible not to be moved by at least one of the characters in this opera. I'd also say newcomers and die-hard opera lovers alike are definitely going to leave the theatre with these wondrous and very moving melodies pulsing through their veins. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.